Lucy's Kitchen. It's Lucy's Kitchen. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. It's Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen. Oh yeah. Lucy's Kitchen. She's Lucy and she's got a kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen.
And now that we've got your attention, let's cook. Hi there. Welcome to Lucy's Kitchen. I'm Lucy and this is my kitchen. Today we're going to make a special treat, Italian potato gnocchi. What are gnocchi, you say? Well, they are wonderful little pasta pillows, very, very light and delicate if they're made by hand. And they usually are served with very simple sauces because the gnocchi themselves are just such a delight. We're going to start with our potatoes, and you can have any kind of potatoes. I am using russet potatoes because they tend to be a little bit drier and don't absorb as much liquid in the cooking. I boiled mine in their jackets for about 45 minutes, and that worked out perfectly. But you can also use leftover baked potatoes. In fact, I highly recommend it because then you end up with potato skins that you can fill later and make into another special treat, which is potato skins. So anyway, we've got our potatoes, and we have several of them. In fact, I've already taken care of some of them. You can smush them with a fork, but you kind of get big chunks. It's still okay. You can work at that. But I just recently discovered this gadget called a ricer. I don't know why. I never had one before. And so you can put your potato right in here. This also would come in handy if you're making mashed potatoes, because that's in essence, that's what we're doing. And there we go. So then these potatoes are slightly warm, which will help push them through more easily. And so as they come out, there are these little delicate things that look like rice. That's why it's called a ricer. All right. And so once we get all of our potatoes riced, we'll go on to the next step. Almost done. I love this thing. One last, oops. Now make sure that if your die comes off the bottom, you put it back down there or your potato will fall right through. And we'll take the last of the potato and all the crumbs, throw them in here. All right, here we go. Last bit. Oh, love it. Super easy and super quick. Now I'm going to take this, first of all, look at how light and fluffy that is. That's exactly what we're looking for with the potato. We don't want it to be gluey or gummy. That's why we don't make this in a mixer or in a food processor. It would just ruin it. So I'm just going to dump it out, and just like making pasta by hand, we're going to make this by hand all together. So I've got this beautiful pile of shredded potatoes or riced potatoes. I'm going to take 1 egg and 1 egg yolk. Save the egg white for your breakfast omelet or to brush on a pie. Don't throw it away. But this is going to make our gnocchi very rich. So just put it in the well in the center. Whoops. Well, that was a mess. It's okay though. So we're just going to just kind of bring it in, mix it up very gently so that the potato distributes through, the egg and the potato distribute amongst each other. And they're fairly nicely mixed. Again, use a very light touch because you do not want this to get gummy, right? Okay, so I don't want it to stick together. And so what I'm going to use here now is a little salt and pepper and some thyme leaves. So I'm just going to strip the leaves off the top of this sprig of thyme, and you can just smell how fragrant and delicious that is. Oh my goodness. Okay, and then we're going to take a little bit of salt and some freshly ground pepper, and then I'm going to sprinkle some flour over the top. Now I know I want about that much. I've got plenty more if I need it, and I'm going to just sprinkle it over the top. This strainer will sift it. We'll just keep that there, and now we'll just continue to mix this together very lightly until, oh, it's beautiful. Oh, now we're not trying to, again, we're not kneading this. We're just gently folding it until it actually starts to form a very delicate ball. And it's very wet right now, so I know I need more flour. So I'm going to just go ahead and put some more in here. And that should be plenty. In fact, I'm not even going to do it all. Oh, look at that. This is really fun. And it's fun because you get to play. It's like playing in the sandbox or playing with Play-Doh. This is homemade Play-Doh. And now we just kind of want to pat it, and fold it and pat it, fold it and pat it. You just want it to barely stick together. And there we go. You don't want too much flour because too much flour would make it hard. And we're trying to make these super delicate. So it's starting to stick together, and you can just press it so that you really get kind of a cohesive mass. I didn't specify the amount of flour, but we're really using about, we're using 1.75 pounds of potatoes before they were peeled. And then about, I'd say, 1.5 cups to 1.75 cups of flour. Now, the reason I don't really specify is a lot depends on how moist your environment is. If you live in a humid climate, your mass is going to come together a lot faster. It's going to be a lot stickier. And if you live in a dry climate like I do, you're going to need a lot more time to get it to stick together. You know, you're going to have to really work it. So now you can see that it's forming a nice solid mass. And this is really a lovely thing. It feels like a pasta dough, but if you break it off, it's kind of crumbly. So again, we're being careful and making it stick together without working it too much. So I'm starting now to see if it'll take a roll, which I think it will, and it's feeling a little sticky. Now, I'm not going to add flour quite yet because I want to make sure that I don't add too much, as I said earlier, and we're going to need a little bit for rolling out the dough. So that looks great. Now I've got my handy bench scraper. I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces. And we'll start with this little one. I'll set those aside. And now I'm going to put a little flour on my counter. That's actually more. And of course, always flour your hands. We're going to just squeeze it till you get it into a kind of a oblong shape before you put it down here to roll it. And again, as you see, I'm pushing the flour aside. We're not rolling it in a lot of flour, but we don't want it to stick. And the more we roll this, the more it's going to start to stick. And it has a tendency to split apart. But again, as I said earlier, super easy. Just, use your feelings. when you're doing this, because we want this to be not very big, maybe a 1/2 inch wide. And I'm going to do this until I get it in the right width. And what I'm experiencing is that it wants to come apart. So we don't want that. So just squeeze it together. Don't be afraid. It won't hurt it. And we're not releasing that much gluten here. So that's, again, why we have not used a machine of any kind to make this into a roll. Okay. So we roll this out like a big piece of Play-Doh. And it's wet, but it's not too sticky, so it's working out well. I have very dry climate, as I may have mentioned before, and so I need less flour than some people do to make sure that this doesn't fall apart. And if it does fall apart like this does, okay, that is perfectly normal. Squeeze it together, doesn't matter. Just push it, smush it. It will work out. Okay, now I've got my bench scraper close by, and I'm going to use it to cut little pieces. And I want them to be about bite-sized. So I'm cutting it about the width of the roll. So we're just going to do little bits. That. And by the way, they don't have to all be the same size, just close. And so we got a lot of gnocchi here, and I'm going to bring my flour over so I can flour my hands while I work with it. Now, some people, the simplest, absolute simplest way to do our next step is to press your finger in. And we do this so that we get a little well, and then the sauce sticks to it. It just fills up, it clings to it, and it's just beautiful. And so that's very easy to do. Just do it, and you don't have to think about it again. If you want to get a little fancier, well, take a fork and press and roll. Press and roll. Press and roll. Press and roll. Don't worry about the flour that you put on it now. It's going to help keep it from sticking. Then there's the Italian gourmet way, which is to use a little thing called a gnocchi paddle. And this thing actually has this has an angled cut in the bottom in case you don't know how to hold it at an angle. But it is helpful. So, and this one is same thing. You just press and roll. And press and let it fall. Press and let it fall. And before you know it, you've made about 1 million of these. And you don't have to be worried about which end you press and which part rolls. And ta-da, these are gorgeous. Let me put the flour over here now. We're starting to do very well, and I've made a few, and I'm just throwing them on a piece of parchment with flour on it, so that they don't stick together between now and the time we cook them. And I'm just going to make a few more, and then we'll be ready to cook. Now, I'm making a couple of sauces today. One of them is a Gorgonzola Cream Sauce. Very easy. I'm going to show you how to make it. Earlier, I made a lovely roasted pepper sauce. All right, our water is boiling. I'm going to put some salt in it. Woo! It's very exciting. And the gnocchi itself, I'm going to cook with some butter and a little bit of olive oil. But that's after we boil it. Okay, we'll just get that going. Add a little olive oil. And I'm going to turn that down to low and let it foam up. And in the meantime, I'm going to throw in some of my gnocchi very delicately. In fact, what I recommend using is a little spatula so that you don't disturb them too much as you put them in the water. Great thing about gnocchi is that when it floats to the top of the water, it's done. So right now, let's see, we've got our butter, and I'm going to throw in a little bit of this wonderful sage. And this is a very traditional thing, is to do butter and sage when you put in your cooked gnocchi. So I'm starting to see a few float to the top. And got the butter on low. Now, eventually, it would be lovely if this turned into brown butter, but you also have to be very careful. You don't want the butter to burn. There's a very fine line between brown butter and burned butter. So right now, we're just melting the butter with it, and it's nice and foamy. It looks fantastic. And here we go. We got some gnocchi rising to the top. So shake off the excess liquid. And these gnocchi are going to have a little bit of a sage butter flavor. Now I'll turn the heat up. We want them to brown on one side. Keep adding as they float to the top. Well, there aren't any more in there, so that shows you how quickly you can put this meal together. It just really takes no time at all. Now, what we do here is we brown them a little, and so now you're going to have that creamy inside with a crunchy outside, and just the combination of textures is really lovely. So it's worth the extra couple of minutes to do this part. And as soon as we got these browned, I'll show you how to make the sauce. It doesn't take very long for these beauties to brown. All right, now I'm going to set this pan aside. I'm going to leave them in the pan for the time being so that they stay warm. And the pan itself has some heat, but not so much that it's going to burn them while we're getting to our next step. Our next step is this Gorgonzola Cream Sauce. So we're going to start with a little bit of cream, and I would say I'm using 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup of cream. Got my gigantic whisk here, and it's simmering already because I had been preheating the pan. And then we're going to take our Gorgonzola, and I'd say this is about 1/4 to 1/3 of a cup, and it's all crumbled. Now, if you don't have a way to get any Gorgonzola, you can also use blue cheese. It works beautifully. And so I'm just going to go ahead and put it all in there, all the crumbles. And now you just watch it, and it just melts. As soon as it melts, it's done. And if you want, personally, I think it can benefit from some freshly ground pepper. Taste it for salt. Wow. That is fantastic. Now, if you serve that to your friends, they're going to think you're like a major chef because this is so delicious. This is like going to a great restaurant, a great Italian restaurant. So here it is on low heat. It's bubbling and it has those nice round big bubbles that make it, that allow you to see how thick it's gotten. It's gotten quite thick. So I'd say we're done. Now we're going to do a little bit of gourmet plating here. I'm going to take just a dollop of this really beautiful Gorgonzola sauce. I mean, what could be better than Gorgonzola and cream? So I'm just going to do this and then make it into a little swath. And then I'm going to do the same with the roasted red pepper sauce. And as you may recall, this is very, very easy to make. Just a roasted pepper, throw it in the blender with a little olive oil, salt and pepper, and a tiny bit of garlic, and you've got an incredible sauce. It's the essence of red pepper. So I'm going to just swap that. And here we go, just a few of these here. Oops, turn that over. Whoops, well, I'll taste that later. There we go. Can always make it pretty again. And put that there. Little one here. And I'm going to serve up a few that are plain. These are the ones that have the sage butter flavor, and they are just a delight by themselves. With a little piece of sage right here. The fried sage has a just fantastic flavor. Just get that out there. All right. See if there's any more. There's another one. Get right on there. Close enough. And now just a little bit of parsley for some more color, a little bit of contrasting color. Well, you can sprinkle it on your plate. A little bit of freshly grated Parmesan cheese. Now this isn't, I grated this earlier, so it's not freshly grated this minute, but you can grate it in front of your company and everybody will be very impressed. And we're done. A beautiful dish for a beautiful dinner. Now it's time to taste it. Make sure everything is just right. So I'm going to taste the Gorgonzola sauce. Gorgonzola melted with cream. What could be better than that? Now the delicious essence of red pepper sauce. Oh. The pepper really stands out. There's a tiny bit of garlic, which gives it a little bit of bite. Salt and pepper is perfectly seasoned. And then, of course, the Parmesan on top. Can't go wrong. And then here we go with the sage butter. That is a perfect little potato pillow. Crispy on the outside. You really get the essence of potato on the inside. That tiny bit of fried sage on top just gives that a little punch. It's absolutely wonderful. Well, that's it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't forget to come back next week to join us for more delicious recipes from my kitchen to yours.